I am pro people saying stupid stuff. If I wasn't, I am absolutely in the wrong line of work, the wrong field, the wrong profession, because I say dumb stuff all the time. And there is a particular person that says an unusually high number of dumb things. Not terrible things, not offensive things, just things that a lot of people tend to think are dumb. And that person is Roy Keane. Now, if you've never heard of Roy Keane, he is basically the Irish id. Now, I was always confused as to what the id, ego, and superego were, so I just kind of picked one out of a hat. But he is the Irish id. He's this amalgamation of the games gone molded into one person, right? Somebody that, along with Graham Souness, is like, or Souness, I don't know how to say his name, right? I try and get close and then move on with my day. But those guys that they are the ankle weights that keep us on the ground from levitating into discussions about inverted wingbacks all day long, right? People that enjoy a good tackle, that don't like the fact that Paul Pogba had fancy hair, that maybe had inside information that Paul Pogba was using drugs the whole time. It looks a little suspicious that they might have actually had that. And then Roy Keane in particular is just somebody who, there's a whole meme based around this guy where it's the idea that, well, what do you mean he scored a brace? Like, that's kind of that's his job. He's a striker. He's supposed to score goals. We shouldn't be praising him for scoring goals. Like, that sort of thought process. But he is getting dragged recently for saying something that on the surface looks absolutely, completely insane, right? And I don't actually think it's that insane. But first, we'll let Roy have his say. So Roy Keane, take it away, brother.
But the levels of his general play is so poor.
Oh, I should specify. This is about Erling Haaland, and considering we just got a copyright thing from Bundesliga, we're watching it in a small window. Hope you're okay with that.
But the levels of his general play is so poor. And not just today, I think his laying stuff off, living headers or whatever it might be. In terms of front of goal, he's best in the world. But for his general play, for such a player, it is so poor. Not just today, I think he has to improve that. He's almost like a League Two player. That's the way I look at him. His general play has to improve, and it will do over the next few years. Being this brilliant striker is fantastic, but he has to improve his all-round game. Has to.
Okay, so that is essentially Roy Keane saying that he thinks that Erling Haaland, in some aspects of his game, is like a League Two player. Now, that's all I saw from this, right? The way the internet works, like that was getting picked up and thrown everywhere and tossed up on billboards, that Roy Keane thinks Erling Haaland is basically a League Two player. But I, in a very unusual position here, because I'm not typically a games gone type person, I'm not somebody that agrees with Roy Keane. Often, I would say. Come on. I'm new age, right? I'm plastic. I'm an American fan. What do I even know? I don't even know what I'm talking about. Well, there's no barbecue involved. Like, what is even happening? How many bald eagles per freedoms are we talking about? Like, how long is the field? Like okay, I get it. Right. And I don't agree with Roy Keane on a lot of stuff because he doesn't measure things in bald eagles per freedoms. But this makes sense to me. This legitimately makes sense to me. This is a gripe that a lot of people have had. And just because Roy Keane said it, in a way, I actually think he articulated it pretty well. He wasn't even as mean or as grouchy as Roy Keane is like known for being. He kind of doubles back on this, right? Like Roy Keane kind of takes a step back and goes, hey, I don't want to say he was afraid of the backlash, or he probably knew he was going to get a little bit, but he does go like he's going to improve at that in the next couple of years. And he also happens to mention that when it comes to being in front of the goal, Erling Haaland's the best player in the world. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But I do think there is a point to be made that Erling Haaland in other aspects of his game, the guy doesn't touch the ball a lot. How could you have any other understanding of the fact that he is not somebody that really is involved in the actual quality that Manchester City is displaying? He's the finishing touch. He's the tip of the spear. But if you put Erling Haaland in a position, in Kevin De Bruyne's position, if you put him in Bernardo Silva's position, if you put him anywhere Phil Foden's playing, even if you put him where Jack Grealish is, Erling Haaland would not look good. He would look like a bit of a fish out of water. Erling Haaland can play one position. He is not somebody that offers a lot of versatility. How do we know this? Pep Guardiola loves to play every single member of his team in 75 different positions. Erling Haaland has only played in one spot. Ever. One. He's only played in one freaking spot on the field, and that is directly in the middle, directly up top. In front of the goal, I agree with Roy Keane. He is the best in the world at the most important thing in the entire sport, right? Because all of football, all of soccer, it revolves around putting the ball in the net. That's what Erling Haaland does better than anyone. So I'm not saying Erling Haaland is a League Two player, right? Erling Haaland is a world-class player who I happen to think is going to win a couple of Ballon d'Ors because he's the best in the world at the most important thing in the sport, right? But just because Manuel Neuer is a great goalkeeper doesn't mean Manuel Neuer is capable of stepping out into the field and being a world-class player that deserves to be in Manchester City outside of his goalkeeping ability. I look at Haaland almost the same way. If you move Haaland back to the midfield, that dude could be playing for Stoke, right? Not that Stoke's in League Two, but it makes sense, right? He's a physical dynamo. He is dedicated to his professionalism. His goal-scoring technique is unbelievable. But if you were asking him to be a well-rounded player, like, let me give you another example. If you took Harry Kane, and you put Harry Kane in the championship as a center back, as a midfielder, as a winger, Harry Kane would be a Premier League level player at all of those. Maybe center back, take a little bit of a learning curve, but he has that overall skill. You wouldn't catch Roy Keane dead saying that Harry Kane has the skill of a League Two footballer. He's just a fantastic finisher. Erling Haaland is a unique player. I feel like there have been players like this before also. I realize that because I'm out here using bald eagles per freedoms as a measurement, and because my accent just screams, hell yeah, brother, basically, that I probably shouldn't be the one to call up like an old reference. But does anybody remember Gerd Muller? I never watched him play. I won't pretend that I watched him play. But the knock on Gerd Muller was that the guy scored a ton of goals and he couldn't do anything else. But Gerd Muller is still referred to as one of the best strikers in history. He had a bunch of goal scoring records, right? And I think Erling Haaland is this kind of modern incarnation of Gerd Muller. He's a better version of Chicharito. These guys that just pop up and they score goals. But of course, goals are the most important thing in the entire freaking sport. So is Roy Keane saying, right, that Erling Haaland is actually not good? No. He's saying that Erling Haaland has a lot to improve in the rounded part of his game, which honestly, before he went to Manchester City, we knew that. And I was part of the crowd of people that was sitting there staring at Erling Haaland going, yeah, is he going to work in Pep's system? Of course he's going to work in Pep's system. Pep's system is going to feed him. That's what's happened. The entire system of the way that Pep and the team plays is like, it's just funneling the ball to Erling Haaland with opportunities to put it in the back of the net. But he's also not really involved in the actual system, right? He is working, constantly moving, with very, very good off the ball presence, right? Erling Haaland poking, prodding, trying different runs, trying creative runs. Very, very good player, and that's not what Roy Keane's not saying. But what he is saying is that Erling Haaland has some serious holes in his skill set. And I think he refers to them specifically.
But the levels of his general play is so poor. And not just today, I think his laying stuff off, headers or whatever it might be.
His laying stuff off, his headers, that he's referring to specific parts of his game here that he thinks could use major improvement. And who better than somebody that actually played in the Premier League to tell you what level Erling Haaland's actual skill set at doing that sort of stuff is at? I don't know. I played high school soccer and made it to this Florida State Championship as a goalkeeper. I am woefully unqualified to tell you what level Erling Haaland's layoff play is at compared to somebody who actually was laying the ball off in a Manchester United team that won, an amount of trophies that Harry Kane could only dream of, right? Like he has apparently mellowed out a little bit. I think this was a fairly reasonable take. While League Two might have been a little low, I think if you stick Erling Haaland in central midfield or on the right wing in the championship, he's probably going to be a survival level player. But I mean, this was not nearly as bad as I thought it was going to be. Right, because when the internet blows up about something Roy Keane has said, and the first thing you see is that he basically called Erling Haaland a League Two player, this is as reasonable as Roy Keane's probably ever been. Now, it lacks the proper Brexit tackling sort of grit and gristle that I'm used to with Roy Keane here, but it is actually, I think this is proper punditry. This is the sort of thing I want to hear from people that have played at this level and have talked about this sort of stuff. And I'm glad that, Roy Keane said it. I am. And next week he'll say something stupid and I'll disagree with him, and then we'll talk about that. But this one made sense to me. And maybe it makes sense to you too. If it doesn't, I'm sure I'll hear from you. Hi, Mom. She's actually, I'm home. I'm going to talk to my mom.